Is very practiced at dangling potential deals and then withholding follow through until they are satisfied with the counteroffer from the other party. And that right now, a lot of what's in play is the uncertainty around some sort of trade deal. There are things that the Trump administration wants from China in exchange for, loosening the gates and allowing these chips to flow into China more aggressively than they can with the licenses that NVIDIA has in hand. And we'll just have to see if there is progress made or how soon there is progress made on some of those asks.
Yeah. Well, you also wonder what the appetite will be in China. Because when the White House first announced this arrangement that appears to not be fully codified, China was reportedly telling buyers in the tech space there to stay away from NVIDIA, to avoid these chips, to buy Huawei and not take the American route, to the point where NVIDIA actually told some of its manufacturers, the H20, to slow their roll while they figured out exactly what the demand case would be. Should we assume that China has a thirst for more American technology?
Not in the long run, Joe. In the short run, they may not have a choice about procuring technology if it's made available. But certainly the Chinese government is working very hard to develop and buttress its own domestic industry because it doesn't want to have to rely on deals like this or potential promises in order to be able to access the chips that it needs to develop AI capabilities. I think that there is a lot of potential for sales, but ultimately that is a narrow window. And it's part of the reason why NVIDIA is so eager to get sales going as soon as possible.
Yeah. Spent some time last evening, Anna, with Peter Navarro. We were talking about a couple of different things, including India and the new tariffs that have been put up on India, now 50%, including that additional 25% as punishment for buying Russian oil. I bring this up because you're a China expert, and the criticism in Washington and in many cases around the world has been that the United States is actually pushing India further into China's arms and in maybe eliminating the alternative that we could seek with another major world trading partner as the White House considers warming relations with China. I asked Peter Navarro about this, and he ended up making news this morning in India as he referred to Russia's war in Ukraine as Modi's war. I asked him about the China effect as well. Listen to what he said, Anna.
Everybody in America loses because of what India is doing. The consumers and businesses and everything lose, and workers lose because India's high tariffs cost us jobs and factories and income and higher wages. And then the taxpayers lose because we got to fund Modi's war.
What's your thought on this, and what does it mean for India's relationship with China?
Well, I think it is indisputable that the Trump administration's retaliatory tariffs on India are, encouraging the Indian government to consider some sort of détente, more significant détente with Beijing. Mm-hmm. The foreign minister was in India last week, early in the week, for talks that were billed as being about the border dispute that's been ongoing for a long time. But clearly, the talks were covering other things based on statements from the ambassador to India, who basically asserted that the U.S. was bullying India by putting these tariffs on Russian oil. India and China have a lot of differences that won't be easy to smooth out, but they have some significant common ground when it comes to their desire and need to continue buying Russian oil. And China definitely sees India as a country they want to stay in that game so that it protects the flow of Russian oil. It ensures that Russian oil continues to flow out of Russia.
There's Bloomberg reporting that Beijing, in fact, began a quiet outreach to India back in March when the president started beating the drum on tariffs. President Xi Jinping wrote a letter to India to test the waters on improving ties. We've got a little more than a minute. Anna Ashton, what will that letter lead to?
Well, I think that the effort at détente from the Beijing side actually started even earlier, though definitely a letter from Xi Jinping to Modi is an inflection point that can't be ignored.
Yeah.
At the end of the month, Modi is traveling to China for the first time since 2018 in order to participate in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization's meeting of heads of state. I think that speaks volumes about the prospects for a warming trend in response to the U.S. moves.